Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Morning, everybody. Plausible deniability. We are taping the show on Thursday, so we do have a few live people watching us, but you people on Roku are just joining you on Friday morning, so you'll get to see all the comments that might have come through if we get some during the show. I'm Keith Engle. You usually see me maybe on the lower half of the screen. Sonia couldn't make it, and Sonia's done a great job filling in for our late great leader, Mac McGrath, who we still miss, and we know he's watching over us. So, Mac, we hope you enjoy the show today, as we always try to please you, still, even in your absence. So, Jack, welcome. Good to be with you in this vein before. We've done it from this vantage point before, but it has been a little while. So, good morning and good evening to you. You're muted.
I'm glad you came clean, because when you try to deceive people the way I do, it backfires. I was taping a show with Sonia a couple of weeks ago that had to be shown in the morning, but we were taping it in the evening. It was daylight out. It was still light out, and I'm by the window, and it's getting dark as the show is coming along. And I didn't realize that till after, but it is being taped. So we're not going to know the result. As we're talking now, we don't know the result of Game 2 between the Timberwolves and OKC. And I'm going to keep my mouth shut, so the next time we speak, I could tell you just as I predicted.
A good move. Jack, you're always one step ahead of me. That's a great move. But we are into the conference finals, and obviously we won't talk a lot about that series, but as of this taping anyway, the Thunder got off to a thunderous start, if you will. Here in New York, we had a little bit of a different kind of thunder, because the Knicks inexplicably rolling pretty much the entire second half, certainly the fourth quarter, blow a 14-point lead with 2 minutes and 20 seconds left, roughly?
Yeah, Keith. You keep thinking what went wrong with the Knicks. Obviously, it was an epic collapse. But did the Knicks completely fall apart or what? And you could look at it different ways. I mean, the Pacers weren't missing any of the three-point shots. They were hitting shot after shot. If there's any criticism of the Knicks, they should have been around the perimeter, making it harder on those three-point shots, forcing them on the inside. They didn't do it. Also, I think teams tend to become guilty of this when they have a type of nice lead the Knicks had. Like you mentioned, it was up to 17 points, then 14 points. You keep looking at the clock, and it gets to be a certain point where all you're concerned about is taking time off the clock. You stop playing your game. At one point, Josh Hart is under the basket with the ball. He throws it out. So he'd rather use up an extra 10, 15 seconds if possible than get the good percentage shot and get the 2 points in that situation. And it's not like the Knicks went completely cold. They did score some points late in the game. They missed a couple of key foul shots. Pacers missed one, Knicks missed two. It's like everything that could have gone wrong for the Knicks went wrong at the end, and it culminated in the crazy bounce that I'm sure, Keith, you were thinking all the way back to, what was it, like 1969, was it, when the Celtics beat the Lakers in Game 7 on that Don Nelson shot where the ball went right up in the air and then fell in the basket.
It was amazing. All the way up, I'm like, I cannot believe this ball's going to go in. I was certain it was going in. I don't know why. I didn't have a great angle any better than anybody else, but I'm like, ball's going to go in. And I thought it was a 3 at the time. I was surprised when they put up the 2, but obviously he was on the line. To your point about the blowing the lead, I mean, the Knicks did score 6 points in that 2-minute span. It isn't like they ran off a big run, but the Pacers scored 20 points in 2 minutes. That's amazing. I think the perimeter, they should have defended the 3 a little more. I think they were too worried about fouling, letting them score 3 with no time, without the clock running. And I think they got too wrapped up in that. And then things got tight. They had a little situation on the bench with 34 seconds left, I think, between OG and who came in, and Towns. OG got in Towns' face a little bit. Brunson and Bridges had to get in the middle of them. I'm not sure yet. They haven't really talked about what that was about. I'm sure we'll hear more before Game 2 tomorrow night, or tonight. whatever you want to say. Friday night, we'll say that.
And you're thinking of the minutes, Keith, too. The big knock on Tom Thibodeau was he wears out his starters. He plays them too much. Well, the Knicks starting 5 played a total of 19 minutes more than the Pacers starting 5, which averages out to close to 4 minutes per man amongst the starters on average. If we take, the whole unit, is that significant? A little bit. It counts for something, but I don't know how significant it is. But keep this in mind. Foul trouble was the reason for that, because Jalen Brunson had to go to the bench. If he didn't get in foul trouble the way he did, that number would have been higher. That number would have been more like 25 minutes more. And it was just one of these situations where the Pacers just put it together. Shot after shot was going in, and you kept waiting for the Knicks to just nail the game down. They were on the verge of nailing it down. And if we compared it to baseball, Keith, it would be like having 2 strikes on the batter. You're 2 outs in the 9th inning multiple times. You're so close to ending this darn game, but somehow you let one batter after the other, get out of the jam, and then it comes back to bite you. I'm going to ask you this, Keith. A lot of these commentators are saying, oh, it's only one game. It's a long series. I'm listening to Tiki Barber today. He's saying, no, this isn't like the NFL playoffs. You lose a game like this, you go home. It's best 4 out of 7. Relax. It's early on. And then Tiki says, I think the Knicks will win the next 4 games. Really? I mean, I can't imagine the Knicks winning the next 4 games. No. I don't think this is an aberration. Going into this series, I made a bold pick. I picked the Pacers in 7. And when the Knicks were dominating, you don't know the way I was kicking myself, Keith. I'm rooting for the Knicks. I'm a New Yorker, and I picked the Pacers to actually beat, my home team.
I'd pick the Knicks at 7 myself. I still think it'll go 7. I will say this. There's different types of losses, and I'd rather lose the way the Timberwolves lost the other night than lose this way. This is as bad as a loss can get for your psyche, in my mind. Now, fortunately, they come back and they're playing pretty quickly again Friday night, right? So not a lot of time to stew on it, but enough time that I think it could be in the Knicks' head, especially if they get a big lead. We saw this out of the Knicks for a lot of years, even when Thibodeau first got here. When they first started getting better, they would constantly be blowing fourth quarter leads, and that type of thing gets in your head. I hate to see that. And Rick, I do see your comment there. We're gonna talk about that, so don't go away.
Yeah, I think there's some intangibles, Keith, that you and I can't fully analyze because we don't know the answer to it, and no one knows the answer to it. these teams are playing every other day for the rest of the series. Every other day. You know, they play a game, a day off. They play a game, a day off. They play a game, a day off. Which team can recover better physically? Okay? That because if one of the teams is fatigued, a couple of the key players, more than a couple of key players on the other team, that makes all the difference. I mean, we're analyzing who's going to beat who based on them being physically up to the task. And the fatigue issue bothers me as far as the Knicks go, because I get the feeling outside of Mikal Bridges, the fatigue factor is affecting the Knicks players just maybe a touch more. I could be wrong on that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, they didn't seem fatigued until there was 2 minutes left in that game, right? So I'm not sure. I agree. Who recovers the best or the fastest is going to make a huge difference. I think the Knicks have more to overcome, though, because it's not just the physical fatigue. They've got mental fatigue because of the situation and the way they lost this game. I don't think you get over that in a day or two. I don't know.
Okay, but let's talk about history a little when they blew that game during the time they played the Pacers in the Reggie Miller era, where that was just as bad a loss then as last night.
Horrible.
They were both terrible losses. I mean, let's put them pretty equal as far as that goes. We could debate which was a more damaging loss, but what does it really matter? They were both devastating losses, and mentally was terrible. The Knicks came back in game 2, and they at the Garden, and they won that game and won it decisively. So I don't know whether we're going to have a repeat. And then, of course, they went to Indiana and lost games 3 and 4 in that series, but then won games 5 and 6 to set up a 7th game at the Garden, which they lost basically the buzz on the Patrick Ewing, fingertip roll that didn't go in.
Right. Well, I sense that this Knick team is resilient, and they're going to fight back. I think they're a mentally tough team. I really do. You don't come back from 2 20-point deficits against the defending world champions without some kind of resiliency and mental toughness. And I think this Knick team will bounce back. And it's funny, you talked about Reggie Miller some 30 years ago now, that series. And Rick wants to talk about, he means choke here. I thought Halliburton, and he's probably lucky they end up winning the game, because he looked even worse if he does that. And he did, at the time, he thought he won the game with a 3-pointer. And he gives the choke sign, the universal, exactly the way Reggie Miller did it 30 years ago. And I find it just, and a lot of people maybe won't, it's just classless, because he did it right to the Knicks bench. The Reggie Miller thing was a little different, by the way. That was part of his byplay with Spike Lee. That was part of that. And I'm not even excusing it away. I find Halliburton's demonstration last night worse than what Reggie Miller did 30 years ago.
I'd say it was the same what Reggie Miller did. What Reggie Miller did was completely classless. And Reggie Miller was, as a commentator for the game, he tried to disassociate himself from that, not comment, not laugh about it. But there was a picture of him smiling. He had to smile to Halliburton. I think Halliburton, didn't mean to disrespect the Knicks. I think he meant more to honor Reggie Miller, but he was honoring Reggie Miller for a very unsportsmanlike act. Okay. And you don't do something like that. I mean, and I was a little surprised, because I thought Halliburton was a classy individual. Because if you recall, when his dad taunted Giannis, Halliburton said right after the game, that was inappropriate on my dad's part. There's certain ways to act, and I'm going to have a discussion with my dad about it. That's not the way to go about things. And I thought, wow, that's good. That's classy. And then the father apologized. And for him to do that, like I was telling you before the show, Keith, I was angry the other day when I heard there was a Pacer fan at the Garden during the Knick game. And Knicks fans followed him, and they threw things at him because they knew the Pacers were going to be playing the Knicks next. And I was so outraged at the Knicks fans. I said, I would rather lose the series than Pacer fans getting physically abused. I'd rather lose the series. I don't support my team at all if that's the conduct that's going to be. And if Pacer fans aren't going to take the same position, they're going to laugh it off, and they're going to have Halliburton's act over this. I suggest if you come to the Garden, don't let anyone know you're Pacer fan. Just root silently, because even though I would disapprove of any abuse towards any Pacer fan in any way, shape, or form, Halliburton and the Pacers would have brought on your misery if you run into any, amongst Knick fans.
I would hope somebody in the Pacer organization would talk to Halliburton today and remind them about the ugliness that went on in Detroit 15 years ago, the malice at the Palace, or what they call that, the fight where, Ron Artest went up into the stands and half the team was up there, fans on the court. Basketball was the most, to me, because of the intimate setting, the fans are so close. They're on the court, basically. And you have really hyped up emotions. I don't think players need to really fire that up anymore. And I'm not sure if I agree. Yes, he may have been doing it as a tribute. It's just a horrible word to use, right? To Reggie Miller, but he did it right to the Knicks bench. He didn't go to Reggie Miller and do it. He went to the Knicks bench, basically. And I thought it was, again.
You know what it is? You have a gutless commissioner in Adam Silver. Now, he seems to be a very nice guy, a terrific guy. And if he was my neighbor, I probably would be a good friend of his. But he's a gutless commissioner. What the league has to do in the preseason and remind the players during the year, any form of taunting is going to could result in a suspension, even if it's a playoff game. And what the league should do, and then they're not going to do it, obviously, and I know Mac would have laughed at me about this, is suspend Halliburton for a game. And send a message, we're not tolerating this. I don't care if it's a playoff game. What you did was over the top. You taunt the Knicks bench with a choke sign. You're spewing things amongst the fans where, like you mentioned, Keith Malice in the Palace, where things could get out of hand. And the fans have noticed if a player does something outrageous and they get suspended for a game, the fans are content at that point because they feel, okay, it was taken care of, and then we could move on. Yeah.
Rick points out that the Pacer fan that you're referring to is a New York City firefighter. Regardless, we shouldn't be threatening him no matter.
No, I mean, first, yeah. Listen, fans could turn on you pretty quickly. I coached, believe it or not, Keith, in high school, but there was one year where I coached at another school. Okay, they're junior varsity, and the students at the high school I was at didn't know it. And then they all show up for the game, no idea. And then they see me on the bench coaching the other team, and all of a sudden they're booing and yelling, Benedict Arnold. It's like, Hirsh this, Hirsh that. I went from one of the most popular teachers to they're like, man.
I'll tell you, listen, before Rick puts it up, Rick, don't put any peach basket references up because Jack coached basketball.
Well, that was the Peach League, actually. I only need to remind everyone of that.
So anyway, look at this. I knew this was going to be a hard-fought series. These teams have had a great history, as we talked about 30 years ago and last year when the Pacers knocked them out. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. How the Knicks bounce back Friday night may determine how the series go. I know your thoughts on home court advantage. I don't think you can lose 2 games at home and expect to win this series.
If I'm going to look at things from an optimistic level, if I'm the Knicks, I'll look at what the Pacers have been doing lately through the playoffs. They've been coming from behind, and they've been coming from behind where percentage-wise the chances of them winning have been very little. And you don't keep that up for long. Eventually, the well runs dry. And you're not going to, you have to play a little better than you've been playing on balance, and listen, take it a game at a time. If you're the Knicks, you got to take it a game at a time. 100%. If they lose game 2, it's going to be a problem because now can you really think of it one game at a time? That even though that's the goal, it's got to enter your mind. We're down 2-0. Let's split in Indiana. Win game 5 at the Garden. We'll get that. And then we just have to win 1 game in Indiana, and that'll force a 7th game, and we'll like our chances. Now you're thinking long range more, and then you run into problems.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up the Pacers coming back. Now that I'd forgotten all about this, but we talked about the Knicks' great comebacks from in the third quarter from 20 points down. But didn't the Pacers have like back-to-back games where they came back from maybe not 14 down with 2 minutes left, but some crazy
against the Cavaliers, down 7 points with 49 seconds to go. And they win in regulation.
Very similar to what we're talking about here.
It's repeated itself. I mean, they were making every shot. They just had to miss one shot along the way. You know, kind of reminded me when your Patriots won the Super Bowl over the Falcons, Keith. Brady was ridiculously good. You know, all the Falcons had to do was make one play amongst many, and that would have won them the game, and everything went perfect for New England.
It made one play when I thought the game was over. If you remember Julio Jones making a great catch along the sideline in the fourth quarter on a long third down play, I thought the game was over. As much as they were coming back, and then they took a big sack and a fumble. And I have to put this out there. The Patriots that day, I don't know why I was not in a panic mode that day, because I kept saying I was on a cruise ship at the time. And I was with some big Patriot fans, and there was all Patriot fans, Falcons fans, or Patriot haters. I felt like one score, just get one score, and we're going to come back and win this game. I kept saying that. Everybody's going, what are you nuts? What are you nuts? And maybe because I've been drinking all day, I'm not sure, but I was very confident we could come back in that game. We just got one score. And you get that feeling with this Pacer team. I like the analogy, because once you do this a couple of times, this is why I think the Knicks will bounce back too, because they've already bounced back from some adversity in these playoffs. Once you do this a couple of times, you start to feel invincible. We can come back from anything. No deficit.
Well, if you're the Knicks, it comes down to this now. Are you a better team than the Pacers? If you're a better team than the Pacers, yeah, I mean, you have an excellent chance to come back and win the series, but who knows? I mean, it's such a thin margin sometimes. You talk about the Knicks Pistons series. Let's say that they made the call on Hart at the end of game 4 and Hardaway went to the line. Pistons probably win that game. And now what are we talking about? Instead of the Knicks winning in 6, we would have had a game 7, and who knows who would have won that game for sure. So sometimes it's such like a small little margin. Or you could we're talking about the New England area, during the Bird Magic era, the year the Celtics in '84 beat the Lakers in 7 games. After 4 games, the Celtics never had a lead.
Yeah.
They were never ahead at the end of regulation, yet they won 2 overtime games. They won a couple of games they really shouldn't have won. And in reality, the Lakers easily could have won that in 4 games. But because of that circumstance, somehow it got extended to game 7 where the Celtics won it.
That's why I think this is going to be an epic series. I really do. I think this last night was just a stage setter. So we'll look forward to Friday night and see how they can come back. We aren't going to talk too much, as you said, about the other series, because they're going to be playing here in a couple hours, and you'll have a chance to talk about that maybe we'll talk about it on Sunday morning probably. But we do have other NBA news, as SGA from the Thunder beats Jokic for the MVP. And I don't know if a surprise, but Jokic, who I believe has won 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, had probably, I think, maybe his best year of his career and doesn't win.
But it's not best player of the year, Keith. Fans lose sight of what the award means. Most valuable player. And obviously, if Jokic isn't on Denver, they wouldn't be nearly as good as they would. You say that about any star, but which team had a much better year? OKC had a great regular season. Denver was floundering at times. They let go of their coach. So don't tell me he's the most valuable player. Look, it always drove me crazy when A-Rod would win the most valuable player award. Texas would finish in last place. I'd say they could finish in last place with me. What's most valuable? What? He wasn't no value to his team. And even when it was coming down with Ohtani and Judge, I would tell myself, if you want to give it to Ohtani, give it to him because he put some butts in seats and he elevated the popularity of the game, but he wasn't that valuable for the Angels. Now, it wasn't his fault, obviously. Same with Mike Trout, the player that, has the biggest impact on helping his team win. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a first place team. You could elevate a team and make them into a contender, a much better. Jokic, they didn't really do that this year. Not his fault. He's a great player, one of the all-time greats. So I'm not questioning how good he is. And if you want to tell me Jokic is better than SGA, okay, that's another argument. But SGA was clearly, to me, the MVP this year with Jokic.
Yeah, I don't have an argument. Again, I don't have an argument with Jack's argument here. You're right. I mean, MVP is that, not best player, most valuable. We saw years, you talked about baseball and A-Rod. I go back to 1979. Willie Stargell co-won with Keith Hernandez. Yeah. He didn't have the best numbers in the world that year, but he was a leader of that team and led them to a pennant. And that's what the award's for. I don't think you have to have anywhere near the best stats in the league. Don't throw numbers at me when it's about MVP, because there's a lot of intangibles you can kind of roll into this award. And I think you're right. And you cannot be on a losing team and be the MVP, because what have you kept them from? Just more losses. That's all. Right.
Well, Denver wasn't a losing team, but they didn't have a good regular season.
No, I don't mean. Yeah, I meant more the A-Rod, with the Rangers thing, and Andre Dawson with the Cubs. Those types of MVPs I never got.
Right. Change the name of the award to Best Player Award, and now you could talk to me about Jokic if you want.
And by the way, you can have both awards too. You can have Player of the Year and MVP. Some leagues do. I mean, you can still do that. Rick points out that SGA's wife attended UAlbany right here locally and played soccer for 4 years.
I'm sure, Keith. I'm sure Rick. All our listeners out there are really interested, in that piece of information.
We do. Always up here, we talk about our local teams always. So
okay, there you go.
And by the way, last year's NFL Rookie of the Year, Hirsh, played right here at UAlbany before he transferred to Florida State. Just saying, there's a connection.
Anyway, you think University of Albany is ever going to, make its mark in the NCAA tournament?
Not in basketball or football, no. But they are like one of the top lacrosse programs in the country. Yeah, women and men. So yes, there's some good athletes here in upstate New York, Jack. Not all down there in the city.
No, the city. You notice New York City never turns out, NFL players. It's just not a hotbed. Yeah,
that's a good point. Speaking about football, I want to pivot a little bit away from basketball. We had some news about a very polarizing figure in the world of pro football. I think his legacy is interesting. Jim Irsay passed away in his sleep, I believe, at 65 years old, which is a little disconcerting to me. He lived a hard life. I mean, the man.
Well, he lived a hard life, Keith. The way he reportedly didn't take care of himself.
Yeah, hard and fast. I mean, he was very open about his issues with alcohol and drugs and a lot of and mental health issues and a lot of things. But the Colts. The Colts under Irsay's tenure, well, they started with his father, carpet bagging out of Baltimore in the middle of the night, and Jim Irsay taking over this team pretty young. And they've it feels like they've ping-ponged. His legacy is like up and down, because they had some great years with Tony Dungy and Manning and won Super Bowls, and it seemed like they were a great franchise. And they've had other years where they just seem like recently, where they have no clue at all what's going on. So what's your take on Jim Irsay and his legacy in the NFL? He
was less meddling than his dad, taking over by all reports. I mean, you had to watch by 30 by 30, before. And he had a good relationship with Peyton Manning, by all accounts, a very good one. And most difficult decision he had to make when the Colts had the #1 overall pick in the draft and to move on from Peyton Manning. That was Irsay's decision above everyone else's. And it was a tough decision to make and a gutsy decision. And I believe him when he says he cried when he had to make the
Yeah, I think
decision.
so.
Because he was very fond of Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning represented so much to the city, so much to Indianapolis. And to move on from an icon like that, but it was the right decision to make because when you had the chance to draft a talent like Andrew Luck, do you trade the pick or what? I don't know what I have had the guts to move on from Peyton Manning myself. I just don't know.
The injury made it a lot easier because they didn't know what they had, right? To be fair.
But you knew it was coming back. And listen, just like when Tom Brady was not let go from the Patriots, but basically his hand was a little bit forced, the same way with Peyton Manning. Both guys were better off for it because Brady wouldn't have won another Super Bowl staying with New England. No way. He wouldn't have even been close. And Peyton Manning would not have won his second Super Bowl with Indianapolis, but he got it with Denver, and he established a great legacy at Denver as a Bronco as well, even though it'd be thought of more as a Colt than a Bronco.
And Irsay's decision for the Colts in the short term was the right one because it worked out for them. They were really good. They were a playoff team, and he couldn't have known that Andrew Luck was going to decide to retire in 5 years. After 5 years,
I think he had 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. Andrew Luck. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it was 7 years he had. Yeah. And Luck made his decision, and couldn't have been an easy decision because when you still have it as a quarterback and you have that glamour position and the money to maybe Luck got injured as well. And Irsay gave him the remaining money that I don't think he was necessarily obligated to give Andrew Luck. But did Irsay do it out of the goodness of his heart because he was a gentleman, or was it because he was holding out hope that Luck would come back? I kind of feel that was definitely first and foremost on his mind. Let me give him the money. He's my franchise guy. He'll get tired of being on the sideline. He'll get the itch to play. Players love to be on the field as long as they could play. But it never happened. Andrew Luck resisted any temptation of coming back.
I think there's something to that he was holding out some hope for that. And as far as Jim Irsay, I think history will probably treat him better than maybe any time when he was alive, because I think his personality and the way he lived the large in life, I think kind of maybe diminished some of the bigger successes he had as an owner. It's just my opinion. I mean, he went from wanting to punch out Mel Kiper and all kinds of crazy things. I think he'll be remembered probably kinder than he may have been dealt with.
I don't know if he an unpopular owner in Indianapolis. I can't recall that being the case.
In the city of Indianapolis, I think they're like any city. I think they loved him when they were good and they hate him when he was bad. I think the last 5 years they probably have not liked Jim Irsay.
Chief, if the Knicks win the NBA championship and they have a parade for them and then they come to City Hall and they take turns speaking, when James Dolan comes to the mic, there's going to be more boos than cheers. Even if the Knicks win but see, you can't win in some cases, even if you do the right thing. And Dolan hasn't been meddling. He hasn't been meddling.
And exactly, I was going to say, I think, and then we're back to the Knicks, and that's fine because it's a decent segue with owners and how they are, how they deal with their teams. He hasn't meddled. He hasn't even been visible at the Garden, which is good for the Knicks. And I really think what they ought to do is if they win.
Knicks, it doesn't affect the Knicks in any way. It's really good for the Knicks. It's helping them win more games because he's absent.
Yes, because he's a distraction. We don't see him in getting Charles Oakley thrown out of the Garden and stuff. I mean,
you side with Charles Oakley.
I do. Yes, I do.
Well,
I'm not saying he was. Listen, I'm not saying he was 100% accurate, but you could do something different than embarrass him the way that you did.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had him removed or something. Oakley was yelling some things to Dolan. Dolan just should have, accepted it and said next, doesn't he have a private box somewhere, Dolan, where you could keep him a distance away from Oakley?
I'm sure he does, but he liked to sit down there on the floor when he did come to the Garden. That's where he always sat. So,
and you want to know something too? At that time, Michael Jordan was an owner, okay, the Charlotte Hornets, the way Dolan's an owner of the New York Knicks. And Charles Oakley loved Michael Jordan, do anything for him. He could have put in a call, Dolan, to Michael Jordan and say, look, Michael, this really breaks my heart. Help me out with this problem. Your fellow owner, I'd like to make things right by Charles. How can I do it? Okay? Call up Phil Jackson. Call up, people who had him, who were close to Oakley, and say, look, you're a valued player on the Knicks. I did something wrong along the way. Point it out to me. I'm trying to make things right. What can I do? And then if Oakley fails to respond and closes all doors, you've done what you can.
yeah.
And people are going to start realizing you've done what you can for reconciliation, but one side is very stubborn.
It's different circumstances by far, but similar to the Steinbrenner-Yogi feud for quite a few years where Yogi refused to go back to the stadium. It's a little different story. He got fired.
Steinbrenner could have patched things up very easy at some point way before that by just, saying, look, I'd like to, fly and see Yogi. Eventually he did it. What he did, he could have done a lot earlier. He should have done it a lot earlier. And look, you had Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. Frazier'd always say, well, he has to come to me to apologize. At some point, Ali very quietly could have flown to Philadelphia, met with Frazier, sat down, had a heart-to-heart talk with him about, things that were said. You can work things out in most cases. Some cases, you can't. Something comes up and, it's what it is.
I'm trying to do that with Rick Sherlock and the Mad New Yorker, and it's not working out. Rick does want to point out that you should take it easy, Jack, because he didn't point out how he did want to know how a one-room classroom had a JV basketball.
The timing isn't good. We talked about that a while ago with the JV. It's got to come on immediately. The timing has got to get set on this show. We're like, I know on tape delay, but not by this extent.
In fairness, it was there a while, but we were on a different.
I know. I saw the comments. I see it on the bottom of my screen. Okay,
when we were still on that, and so I waited for it.
Yeah. I mean, I always like Rick's contribution here.
Rick is always on top of it. By the way,
Rick's got to have the last word in. I mean,
he's got the best nicknames for LeBron too. We'll get into that for a while. There's Robert Butler. Robert Butler's here. Hello, Robert.
The best dressed man on the network.
Let's, speaking of Robert, we'll stick with the NFL a little bit. A couple other news pieces this week. The other day, the NFL owners could not get enough votes. They tried. They had to have 24, I think, to eliminate the tush push. They only got 20. I don't get I talked about this Wednesday night, and I went into a little bit of a tirade. Every time leagues, whether it's baseball, football, when we can't stop something or we want something to improve, we don't try to improve people's performance and coach guys up to stop a certain play, or in baseball, don't hit into the shift. We'll put in rules to eliminate the shift. So how about you just get your players better and stop the tush push instead of putting in rules to say the guys that can actually do it very well, which is only a handful of teams, can actually do it. Rick had said something, I don't know if it ever made it into the comments on the show Wednesday night, that the Bills actually had a higher percentage of success with the tush push than the Eagles. So
Keith, you gotta have rules. I mean, the way you're talking, Keith, if you're not gonna have rules, then there should be no offside in soccer. Let players in hockey. There shouldn't be any offsides or anything. Just let players be wherever they want on the ice. Eliminate the zone in basketball completely. Let 5 players stack up wherever the heck they want.
It depends on the situation. I didn't say no rules. I'm saying, like, if guys can't hit because they keep hitting into the shift, should they hit away from the shift? Don't the rules.
But they eliminated. They changed the rules on kickoffs for the most part for safety reasons. Okay,
Theoretically, yes.
and the tush push, players are compromising their safety. I mean, you get caught in the middle of that. You're squashed in the middle of the tush push. I hate it. Well, what are we going to do? Wait till someone gets badly hurt, and then they're going to change the rule for good? I never liked the tush push to begin with, but the unfortunate part about it is the Eagles do it so well.
It's the only reason they want to win
away their signature play, and that's hard to do.
Well, listen. I believe again the violence part. That football's a dangerous game, and all those guys who play know it, and they're well paid for it, for the most part, and they know the risks they're putting themselves in, and they're going to legislate if this is about injuries like the kickoffs. The kickoff was the most exciting play in football, in my mind. A kickoff return is the most exciting play in football. Was not anymore. Because we're trying to legislate danger and violence out of football. It's a violent game. You can't do that.
It is. I mean, certain sports you can't avoid it. I think the problem is long-term players play too long. And Herm Edwards said it best when he played. You never think about things on the back end of life, how it could affect you. When you're getting older, the way it catches up to you later on. And that's why but they love the game. Why would a Travis Kelce come back and say, oh, only one more year? I mean, you don't know what the effects of getting hit could, have on them, but they want to go as long as they can go. And, in certain players, they have all the money they need, but they want to milk it out as far as they could go because they really do love the game.
100%.
I thought this before. This is what I meant to say, but you wanted to talk about the tush push, which I think is boring to the listeners out there. They have an opinion. But when you mentioned Robert Butler, okay, I thought we'd talk about one of your favorite draftees of, not this year, before Will Levis.
Will Levis
is competing with Cam Ward, they say, for the starting quarterback position. I wish these coaches would stop insulting us and stop insulting everyone else. You don't draft a player number 1 overall in the draft for him not to be a starter. If let's say they're competing, and what's the coach going to say? Will Levis played better. He's our starter. What does that do for Cam Ward and the team's confidence in him to send a message he got beaten out? You don't want to do that.
No.
Not this stupidity. That's what Urban Meyer did when they had Trevor Lawrence, in there. He put him in competition with Gardner Minshew. Imagine Gardner Minshew had won that competition. You don't do it. At least with the Giants, with someone like Jackson Dart, they know he's not starting. Fine, they're going to develop him. Eventually, he will start. Or with the way Andy Reid did it with Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. He said Mahomes is going to sit 1 year. Alex Smith is our starter this year. Imagine he threw Patrick Mahomes in the competition with Alex Smith and said, sorry, Patrick, Alex performed better. You're the backup. I mean, Patrick Mahomes would have recovered from it and still been a great quarterback. But what would but you don't do that.
Well, I don't think you need to give him the job either. I mean, there's something to be said to earning something, right? I mean,
he earned it, Keith. He's the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Did I miss all the plays? Did I miss all the plays he played in the NFL so far? I must have missed something. What did he earn? I'm a Cam Ward fan, but
let's say Will Levis is the starter for Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's say he has a really good season. What are you doing next year?
Well, you got some leverage.
Starter. Now, are you going to go with Will Levis in year 2? And let's say he's developing, he's coming along, and he's a very good quarterback. That means you use the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and he's going to be a backup the next few years. It can't work that way.
But isn't the idea to find the best player at every position? That's the idea, whether it's the number one pick in the draft or the guy you already had.
Well, they nearly had that problem years ago, the San Diego Chargers. They had the number one overall pick in the draft. They had to trade Eli Manning to the Giants, and they had Phil Rivers, who was basically their number one overall pick, basically, you know?
Right.
You know, and Drew Brees was there. Drew Brees was great. And if Drew Brees didn't get injured the last game of the season, what were the Chargers going to do? I mean, they had to go with Phillip Rivers because he was drafted so darn high. As it turned out, Drew Brees was a marginally better quarterback over his career.
Marginally, yeah.
As it turned out, yeah.
Marginally. Imagine if, just to take that a bit further, when he did leave the Chargers and went to the Saints, he was originally going to go to Miami, failed his physical. Imagine how much history would have been different if Drew Brees had gone to Miami and they didn't have with Dante Culpepper. Nick Saban might have been winning Super Bowls and not ever left Miami to go to Alabama.
I got a great question for you now that we're on quarterbacks to speculate. If Tua can't play for any extended period of time, who's going to be amongst your two other quarterbacks? Who do you go with, Zach Wilson or Quinn Ewers? Zach Wilson is number 2 on the chart right now. Quinn Ewers was drafted 7th. So the Dolphins aren't in love with him if they wait until the 7th round. Let's be honest.
You pretty much know what you got in Zach Wilson as well. So you put them in a competition. They're probably the same guy. Who knows? Danny Fuller, want to say hi to you. Haven't seen you in a bit. Danny, good to see you.
Well, yeah, in some cases, yeah. I mean, look at a couple of quarterbacks still in the league. Jameis Winston is a giant backup. He's going to be 3rd string next year if he's on the team at all, because Jackson Dart on the giant chart as the 3rd quarterback, I'm sure, at the beginning of the year. Jameis Winston is Russell Wilson's primary backup. And he was a number 1 overall pick. Marcus Mariota's Jaden Daniels backup there. Number 1 picks Baker Mayfield. You know, pretty good. He's been worthy of the number 1 overall pick, I think, on balance. And
as a rule, Danny's right, and I've said this for a long time, and this, especially in this draft class. I mean, people reach for quarterbacks way too often, and they fail more often than they don't. And you got to take a shot when the guy's there. I understand, and you're desperate, but Cam Ward, as much as I love Cam Ward's college, he was a great college quarterback. It means nothing going forward, nothing. So I don't have a problem with having to earn his job. And by the way, Danny also says Mac is his number 1 pick, and he's our number 1 pick forever too. So
yeah. Mac was very knowledgeable on judging these college quarterbacks. He didn't get excited about them. I remember he couldn't understand the 49ers trading a couple of number 1s to get Trey Lance. He's just not that good. What are they doing? Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah.
I think last year's college quarterback draft is going to be historic because I think Caleb Williams is going to be an outstanding quarterback in the league. He's going to develop, and then you have Jaden Daniels. I think Drake May is going to be a really good quarterback. Look what Bo Nix did. I think Michael Penix, if he stays healthy, is going to be a good quarterback. The only one I question is J.J. McCarthy in that group.
Well, we haven't seen him yet, so we'll find out, right? But I was going to go back. Oh, one thing I think Mac really missed on with quarterbacks was he really, really dumped on Caleb Williams, and I think Caleb Williams is going to be a really good quarterback. And you may see it as soon as
Mac came around on Caleb Williams. Let me ask you this: Dylan Gabriel, you know college quarterbacks a little better than I do. Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders? They're on the same team. Who's better?
I would say Shedeur Sanders is a better player. He's got a better chance of winning that job than Dylan Gabriel. And I think he'll be a better NFL player in the long haul. I'm not saying he'll be great by any means. I said all along that I thought that Sanders could be a starting quarterback in his league. I just didn't think he was worthy of a top 5 pick or top 10 pick or maybe even a 1st round pick. Turns out I was right. I didn't think he'd be a 5th round pick though. I think the Browns, if they're patient, would maybe a big winner in this draft with that.
Browns have to cut someone. Tell me how it's going to play out if Kenny Pickett, who some people think is going to start for Cleveland, Kenny Pickett, Gabriel, Sanders, Flacco, one of them has to go. You can't carry 4 quarterbacks. And whoever winds up on their practice squad is going to be gobbled up by another team.
I would think that Kenny Pickett is the guy in the most danger in that situation because Flacco, I think, is likely to be the starter there game 1. Not for long, but and then we'll find out about Gabriel. I was never a big fan of Dylan Gabriel, and I wasn't also a fan of Michael Penix. And I don't know why people are so excited about Michael Penix because I didn't see him play all that great last year, but maybe I'm the only guy. He only played a couple of games, and his numbers were pedestrian at best. So I feel the same way about Dylan Gabriel, actually. Coming out of the same system, I'm just not sure. But I think Shooter Sanders with some coaching can be maybe he'll be a backup. I don't know. He could be a starter in this league. I'm never going to tell you he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the game ever. Let's see what else we got here. Browns patient. That's
well. But it's weird that we're talking about the Browns. I think for Hard Knocks this year, I heard the Buffalo Bills are going to be the. Williams holds the ball too long. It doesn't read defenses, but he's going to get better, Rick. He's going to get better.
Rookie.
You'll see he'll improve. And if you want a prediction, by the end of next NFL season, Caleb Williams would have caught up to Jaden Daniels as far as being that type of caliber quarterback. And if I ask you at the end of next season who's better, it's going to be pretty close. There'll be split opinion. Right now, everyone is saying Jaden Daniels, of course.
I would agree. Again, here it is again. I'm agreeing with Jack. Again, this is the whole entire show. I'm agreeing with Jack. I can't believe it. And I will also say, you brought up Will Levis before, and that's one place that I kind of blew it. But
not yet. He could still develop.
Think he's got a chance. I don't think it's going to happen in Tennessee. I think it's going to happen somewhere else. He's going to develop into a decent NFL quarterback, and maybe still the better of that class. I said he'd be the best of that class. Right now, it's C.J. Stroud, Murray, or Bryce Young coming up a little bit, improving, and then
Bryce Young will get better. Bryce Young will be better this year. Yeah, he'll be the Panther quarterback for years at this point.
Yeah, he played well the second half last year. He did very well. Yeah. What else we got here before we wrap it up? We got
Yankees won earlier today.
The Yankees win. They're playing really good ball. You mentioned Devin Williams has pitched well, 10 games in a row, basically now, and maybe time to get his job back in the 9th inning.
I think you give him the job back. They got him to be the closer. He had a terrible month of April, but if you recall, Edwin Diaz had a similar terrible month for the Mets, okay? He was awful for a while, more than 1 month. He was awful, okay, Edwin Diaz, but then he got it together, and he's the Met closer now.
Yeah.
Devin Williams' arm is fine. He's got it together. And if you're going to the playoffs and want to win the World Series, that's the formula. You want Devin Williams there as the dominant closer. He was one of the premier closers in baseball. I know he gave up a homer to Alonso in the playoffs, but don't tell me about one particular game. And if the Yankees want to use him as a setup man, I understand that Weaver's pitching really well in the closer role himself, but I like Devin Williams to be transitioned there and sooner rather than later.
I do agree, Danny, by the way. We'll talk more about the Yankees on the MLB update tomorrow. And by the way, when we're talking about Devin Williams, yes, I believe he'll find his way back to that closer role because Aaron Boone isn't that stupid. I will give Aaron Boone credit because I think he made a really smart move getting him out of that closer role as soon as he did. It was relatively a quick hook. A couple of weeks into the season, he takes him out of that role. And I think it was a very smart move because if he didn't, he runs the risk of losing Devin Williams for the year if things go on too long. Again, mentally and playing, I know you don't agree with necessarily, and this next comment I'm going to make. Playing in New York is not like playing in Milwaukee or someplace else. It's different, and it takes a certain type of guy to do it.
No. I don't think he gave him a quick hook, and I agree with Aaron Boone's decision at the time. Devin Williams was horrendously bad. And after a while, you can't take it outing after outing, the fans booing. It really wears on you. So he moved him to a closer role to kind of get it together. And the problem is Weaver's been pitching well as a closer. So it's like, but Devin Williams now has it back together. There's no urgency to get him back in the closer role. I'm not saying do it right now, but I would like to see him transition back into the closer role as the year goes along. But you know what the danger of that is? If he continues to pitch so well as a setup man, then it's hard to move him out of that role. And you don't want to shake things up when things are going well.
Yeah, you might wait a little while, but I think they'll flip those roles in a bit. I think Weaver's probably better suited to be the setup guy and Williams a closer in the long run. And Weaver, by the way, I mean, Judge has had a phenomenal start to the season. We all know that, but we talked about MVPs before. To me, the MVPs of this Yankee early season are Weaver and Grisham. They're the two MVPs of this team because they've stepped up when other guys didn't and kept this team afloat, whether it were injuries and whatever else. I think you got to give them a lot of credit.
You're getting a little carried away. I mean, you're holding it against Judge how great he is. He's been more than MVP than Grisham. Let's not get carried away here. I mean, the Grisham.
We all know Judge is the MVP.
Grisham has been a wonderful surprise. I mean, I expect him to revert a little back to form. The funny thing, he was supposed to be great field, no hit.
Where'd the power
now
come
from? Now he's not that good of a fielder. He's okay. He's okay, but he's not like a Golden Glove caliber fielder. We heard, oh, what a great glove. I don't see it.
I don't see the great glove either. I don't know where the top came from. This guy never hit 5 home runs in his whole career in a season, I don't think. He's got like 10 or 11, doesn't he?
Right. He reminds me a little of Aaron Hicks when Hicks was okay.
Oh, you got to go
when Hicks was okay.
I'm going to give – if I was Mac now, I'd hit you with the mute button for bringing up Aaron Hicks again in this conversation. Speaking of guys who couldn't play in New York, Aaron Hicks is the poster child.
No, that had nothing to do with New York with Aaron Hicks. He had some success here. That's what the Yankees gave him a 7-year contract at $10 million a year because he did have some success here.
Yes, he did. He had like 60 or 70 really good games
We're
here.
We're the Stankies. I just see it.
Danny's a big on the Stankies about we go back and forth. He's a big Dodger fan, so we got to Jack, tell Keith he never gives the Stankies credit. Well,
Mac would be saying, what's wrong with the Dodgers? They're only 31-19, only a half game ahead.
They're going to win 110 games easy, and they're going to...
and sometimes in my dry sense of humor, I'd say, I see what you mean, Mac. The Dodgers are in trouble. I would worry, all these contracts. Well,
we had some fun. We had some fun today, Jack. I love doing this with you, and I'm glad that we got to do it. You'll see this live on Roku tomorrow morning. So hi, Roku people. Goodbye, Roku people. And for the rest of you, you can watch it again. I'll replay it on my channels as well. And just when you comment, when we don't put it up, remember that we were already here today. So, Jack, thank you for joining me.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun, Keith. I think I blew it at the end with joking around the way the Knicks did in their game, kind of for me. I think the show was going great until at the end I got a little conservative. And
you were great as always. We have a lot of fun. I like to have fun. You know me. I like to have fun on the show. So
I like to joke about Mac. I absolutely love Mac. I still like to bring it up and joke about it. I like to give Mac digs even now because I know Mac is listening.
He would expect
laughing about it. So I still love it, invoking everything when it comes to Mac.
100%. He will live on as long as we're doing these shows.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, I appreciate you joining us. Watch us, and actually you can catch Jack Saturday morning on the, what do we call that show? The debate show. I'll be on later today or Friday, whatever day you want to talk about, with the MLB update and the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. We got the Sunday Big Football Show. We got lots of stuff on National Streaming Sports. We'll see you guys later. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.